Question 1. When evaluating the potential impact of a security incident detected using Cisco CyberOps technologies, which of the following approaches best aligns with U.S. regulatory frameworks and professional incident response best practices? Option A. Prioritize identifying the root cause and then immediately begin eradication, assuming the impact is limited to the initially affected systems. Option B. Immediately notify all stakeholders and initiate a full system rollback without a detailed impact analysis to minimize potential damage. Option C. Focus solely on the volume of network traffic and the number of compromised endpoints, as these are the primary indicators of impact. Option D. Conduct a thorough assessment of the incident's potential and actual effects on business operations, data confidentiality, integrity, and availability, considering regulatory compliance obligations. Correct answer is A. Prioritize identifying the root cause and then immediately begin eradication, assuming the impact is limited to the initially affected systems. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because a rapid and accurate impact assessment is crucial for effective incident response, resource allocation, and stakeholder communication. The pressure to act quickly can lead to overlooking critical details or making assumptions that could have significant consequences. The CBRFIR exam focuses on Cisco CyberOps technologies, implying a context where understanding the scope and severity of an incident is paramount for deploying appropriate Cisco tools and methodologies for containment and eradication. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and evidence-based evaluation of the incident's potential and actual effects on business operations, data integrity, and regulatory compliance. This aligns with the principles of incident response frameworks, which emphasize understanding the what, where, when, and how of an incident to determine its impact. Specifically, in a U.S. regulatory context, this approach is vital for meeting obligations under laws like HIPAA for healthcare data breaches, SOX for financial reporting integrity, or various state data breach notification laws, which often require timely and accurate reporting of the incident's impact. A thorough impact assessment ensures that the response is proportionate to the threat and that all affected parties are appropriately informed and protected, thereby minimizing legal and reputational damage. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical indicators without considering business context fails to meet regulatory requirements. For instance, under the U.S. Department of Commerce's National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, Special Publication 800-61, Computer Security Incident Handling Guide. A key step is to determine the impact of the incident. Ignoring the business impact could lead to underestimating the severity, resulting in insufficient remediation efforts and potential noncompliance with breach notification laws that mandate reporting based on the type of data compromised and the number of individuals affected. Another incorrect approach that prematurely declares the incident contained without a comprehensive impact assessment is also professionally unacceptable. This haste can lead to overlooking residual risks or secondary impacts, such as ongoing data exfiltration or the compromise of interconnected systems. Such oversights can result in significant regulatory penalties, especially under frameworks like the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, which requires businesses to implement reasonable security procedures and practices. Failing to fully assess the impact before declaring containment could mean that sensitive personal information remains exposed, leading to further breaches and severe legal repercussions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach to incident response, beginning with initial detection and analysis. This includes gathering all available evidence, correlating technical findings with business processes, and consulting with relevant stakeholders, e.g., legal, compliance, business unit leaders. The impact assessment should be an iterative process, refined as more information becomes available. Professionals should leverage incident response playbooks and frameworks, such as those provided by NIST, to guide their actions and ensure that all critical aspects of an incident, including its potential and actual impact, are thoroughly evaluated before moving to containment, eradication, and recovery phases. This methodical approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and compliant with applicable regulations. Question 2. The efficiency study reveals that the incident response team's current methodology for handling a suspected data breach involving sensitive customer information stored in a cloud environment is leading to delays in service restoration and potential compromise of investigative findings. The team is debating the best immediate course of action following the initial detection of unauthorized access, considering the need to comply with U.S. data privacy regulations and ensure the admissibility of evidence. Which of the following approaches best balances immediate containment with the preservation of digital evidence? Option A. Immediately initiate forensic imaging of affected cloud storage volumes and relevant server logs, meticulously documenting all steps and maintaining a strict chain of custody, while simultaneously implementing containment measures that do not alter the original data. Option B. Prioritize the immediate deletion of all suspected malicious files and user accounts to eliminate the threat, assuming that the primary goal is to prevent further data loss. Option C. Proceed with direct data recovery and analysis from live cloud instances without creating forensically sound images, focusing on quickly identifying the extent of the breach. Option D. Collect relevant files and logs by simply copying them to a separate location, relying on the team's memory for details about the collection process. Correct answer is A. Immediately initiate forensic imaging of affected cloud storage volumes and relevant server logs, meticulously documenting all steps and maintaining a strict chain of custody, while simultaneously implementing containment measures that do not alter the original data. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the need for rapid incident response to mitigate damage and the legal/regulatory requirements for preserving digital evidence. The organization's reliance on cloud-based services introduces complexities in data access, chain of custody, and jurisdiction, especially when dealing with potential data breaches that could impact customer privacy or intellectual property. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to actions that inadvertently compromise the integrity of evidence, making a structured, legally compliant approach paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the preservation of digital evidence in a forensically sound manner, adhering to established incident response frameworks and relevant U.S. regulations such as the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, if health data is involved, or the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, for consumer data, and general principles of evidence handling under U.S. law. This involves creating forensically sound images of affected systems, documenting all actions meticulously, and maintaining a strict chain of custody. This method ensures that any subsequent analysis is based on untainted evidence, which is crucial for legal proceedings, regulatory investigations, and understanding the full scope of the incident. It aligns with the principles of due process and the admissibility of evidence in a legal context. Incorrect approach is analysis, an approach that focuses solely on immediate data deletion to remove the threat without proper forensic imaging and documentation, fails to meet regulatory requirements for data breach notification and investigation. This action would likely violate data privacy laws by destroying potential evidence of unauthorized access or data exfiltration, hindering any subsequent legal or regulatory inquiry. It also breaches ethical obligations to conduct a thorough investigation, an approach that involves direct manipulation of live systems for data recovery without creating forensically sound copies risks, altering the very evidence needed to understand the incident. This can lead to the loss of volatile data and compromise the integrity of the evidence, making it inadmissible in legal proceedings and violating best practices for digital forensics. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of forensic principles and potential legal ramifications. An approach that relies on informal data collection methods, such as simply copying files without proper hashing, timestamps, and chain of custody documentation, undermines the integrity and admissibility of the collected information. This casual approach is insufficient for meeting the rigorous standards required by U.S. legal frameworks and regulatory bodies, potentially leading to the dismissal of findings and significant legal penalties. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased incident response plan that integrates forensic preservation from the outset. This involves establishing clear protocols for evidence collection, handling, and storage that align with U.S. legal and regulatory standards. When faced with conflicting priorities, the decision-making process should weigh the immediate need for containment against the long-term necessity of a legally defensible investigation. This requires understanding the potential legal and regulatory consequences of each action, consulting with legal counsel when necessary, and prioritizing actions that preserve evidence integrity while still addressing the immediate threat in a controlled manner. Question 3. Compliance review shows that during a recent critical security incident, the incident response team's initial actions involved immediately disconnecting the affected servers from the network and proceeding to re-image them to restore services as quickly as possible. This was done without any attempt to capture volatile memory or create forensic images of the affected hard drives. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of conducting forensic analysis and incident response in a manner that preserves evidence integrity and meets potential regulatory requirements? Option A. Immediately capture volatile memory from affected systems and then create bit-for-bit forensic images of all affected storage devices before initiating any containment or eradication actions that could alter the system state. Option B. Initiate a full system backup of the affected servers and then proceed with wiping and rebuilding the systems to ensure a clean and secure environment. Option C. Promptly disconnect affected systems from the network to prevent further damage and then proceed with a rapid malware scan to identify and remove malicious software before restoring services. Option D. Immediately isolate the affected servers from the network and then begin the process of re-imaging them to restore normal operations as quickly as possible. The correct answer is A. Immediately capture volatile memory from affected systems and then create bit-for-bit forensic images of all affected storage devices before initiating any containment or eradication actions that could alter the system state. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response where the urgency to contain a breach clashes with the need to preserve evidence for potential legal or regulatory scrutiny. The primary challenge lies in balancing immediate operational needs with the strict requirements of digital forensics and potential legal proceedings. Professionals must make rapid decisions that could impact the integrity of evidence, the effectiveness of the response, and the organization's compliance posture. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to actions that inadvertently compromise the chain of custody or destroy critical forensic data. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the preservation of volatile data and the establishment of a forensic baseline before any containment actions that might alter the system state. This aligns with the principles of digital forensics, which emphasize maintaining the integrity of evidence from the moment of collection. By first capturing volatile memory, RAM, and then creating forensic images of affected storage devices, responders ensure that the most ephemeral and potentially crucial evidence is secured. This methodical approach is essential for meeting regulatory requirements that mandate thorough investigation and accurate reporting of security incidents. It also supports the chain of custody, a fundamental legal and ethical principle in forensic investigations, ensuring that evidence can be authenticated and admitted in legal proceedings. This practice is implicitly supported by frameworks that guide incident response and forensic analysis, emphasizing data integrity and defensible investigation processes. Incorrect approaches analysis. Immediately isolating affected systems without first capturing volatile data is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Volatile memory contains critical information about the attacker's activities, running processes, network connection, and user sessions that is lost when a system is powered down or rebooted. This loss of evidence can hinder the investigation, prevent the identification of the full scope of the compromise, and make it impossible to meet regulatory obligations for detailed incident reporting. Performing a quick scan for malware, and then proceeding with system restoration without creating forensic images of storage devices is another failure. While malware scanning is part of incident response, it is not a substitute for forensic imaging. Forensic images capture the entire state of the storage media, including deleted files, system logs, and configuration settings, which are vital for understanding the attack vector, persistence mechanisms, and the full impact of the breach. Relying solely on a malware scan can lead to an incomplete understanding of the incident, potentially leaving the organization vulnerable to reinfection or further exploitation. This approach also fails to meet the standards for evidence preservation required by many regulatory frameworks. Wiping and rebuilding affected systems without any forensic data collection is the most severe failure. This action completely destroys all potential evidence, making it impossible to conduct a thorough investigation, determine the root cause, or comply with any legal or regulatory requirements for incident reporting and remediation. It demonstrates a disregard for forensic best practices and the principles of evidence preservation, which are foundational to responsible incident response and cybersecurity compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased approach to incident response that prioritizes evidence preservation. This involves 1. Identification and triage. Quickly assess the situation to understand the nature and scope of the incident. 2. Containment. Implement measures to stop the spread of the incident, but do so in a way that minimizes evidence alteration. 3. Eradication. Remove the threat from the environment. 4. Recovery. Restore systems to normal operation. 5. Lessons learned. Document the incident and identify improvements. Crucially, throughout the identification and containment phases, forensic data collection, starting with volatile data and then proceeding to non-volatile data, must be the immediate priority before any actions that could destroy or alter evidence are taken. This structured methodology ensures that investigations are thorough, defensible, and compliant with relevant regulations and ethical standards. Question 4. Governance review demonstrates that a critical security incident has been detected on a production server just hours before a scheduled, mandatory system upgrade is set to commence. The incident appears to involve unauthorized access, but the full scope and impact are not yet understood. The upgrade process involves significant changes to the operating system and network configurations. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action to ensure both effective incident response and regulatory compliance? Option A. Immediately halt the scheduled system upgrade and initiate a full forensic imaging and analysis of the affected server and related systems before any further actions are taken. Option B. Proceed with the system upgrade as planned, relying on the upgrade's logging mechanisms to capture any relevant forensic data during the process. Option C. Continue with the system upgrade, but instruct the IT team to pay close attention to any unusual activity and document it in the upgrade logs. Option D. Pause all system operations indefinitely to conduct an exhaustive forensic investigation before considering any system changes or upgrades. The correct answer is A. Immediately halt the scheduled system upgrade and initiate a full forensic imaging and analysis of the affected server and related systems before any further actions are taken. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response, where the initial discovery of a security incident overlaps with a planned system upgrade. The professional challenge lies in balancing the urgency of forensic investigation with the operational necessity of system maintenance, all while adhering to strict data handling and reporting regulations. The need for swift action to contain the incident must be weighed against the potential for the upgrade process to inadvertently alter or destroy critical evidence. Careful judgment is required to ensure that evidence preservation is prioritized without causing undue operational disruption, and that all actions are meticulously documented for regulatory compliance and potential legal proceedings. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes evidence preservation and containment by immediately isolating the affected systems and initiating forensic imaging before any system changes are made. This aligns with the fundamental principles of digital forensics and incident response, which mandate the preservation of the original evidence in its most pristine state. In the context of U.S. regulations, this approach supports compliance with data breach notification laws, e.g., HIPAA, state-specific laws, by ensuring that accurate and complete information can be gathered about the incident's scope and impact. It also upholds the integrity of the investigation, which is crucial for demonstrating due diligence and fulfilling legal obligations to report accurately. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with the system upgrade as scheduled without a thorough forensic investigation. This would likely lead to the destruction or alteration of critical evidence, making it impossible to determine the root cause, scope, and impact of the incident. This failure to preserve evidence directly contravenes the principles of digital forensics and could result in regulatory violations related to data breach reporting, as accurate information cannot be provided to affected parties or authorities. Ethically, it represents a dereliction of duty to investigate and protect the organization's assets and data. Another incorrect approach is to halt all system operations indefinitely to conduct an exhaustive forensic analysis before any upgrade activities. Prioritizing evidence is crucial. An indefinite halt can cause significant business disruption and financial losses. This extreme measure may not be proportionate to the initial assessment of the incident's severity and could lead to operational failures that themselves create security vulnerabilities or violate service-level agreements. From a regulatory perspective, while evidence preservation is key, an overly cautious approach that cripples operations might be seen as an inefficient use of resources and could indirectly harm stakeholders. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on system logs generated during the upgrade process to reconstruct the incident. System logs, while valuable, are often incomplete, can be tampered with, and may not capture the full context of an attack. This approach risks missing crucial forensic details, leading to an inaccurate understanding of the incident. This could result in inadequate remediation efforts, leaving the organization vulnerable to future attacks, and could lead to misrepresentations in regulatory reporting, potentially violating laws that require accurate and comprehensive breach disclosures. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased approach. First, immediately contain the incident by isolating affected systems and performing forensic imaging. Second, conduct a preliminary analysis of the forensic images to understand the nature and scope of the incident. Third, based on this preliminary analysis, determine the impact on the planned upgrade. If the incident is severe and directly impacts the upgrade's security implications, the upgrade should be postponed or modified. If the incident is contained and does not directly compromise the upgrade's integrity, a carefully managed upgrade might proceed, with continuous monitoring and forensic data collection throughout the process. All actions, decisions, and their justifications must be meticulously documented to ensure transparency and compliance with regulatory requirements. Question 5. System analysis indicates a critical server within a US-based financial institution has exhibited anomalous behavior, including unauthorized outbound network connections and unusual file access patterns. The incident response team suspects a potential insider threat or a sophisticated malware infection. To initiate the investigation, what is the most appropriate initial technical action to preserve potential evidence on the compromised server? Option A. Rely solely on network intrusion detection system alerts and firewall logs to identify the source of the anomaly. Option B. Create a forensically sound image of the server's storage media without altering the live system. Option C. Immediately reboot the server to clear temporary files and restore normal operations. Option D. Connect to the server remotely and directly modify suspicious files to remove any identified malware. The correct answer is C. Immediately reboot the server to clear temporary files and restore normal operations. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response where the integrity of evidence is paramount, especially when dealing with potential insider threats. The difficulty lies in balancing the need for immediate containment and investigation with the legal and ethical obligations to preserve evidence accurately and without alteration. The presence of a potentially compromised internal system adds complexity, as standard procedures might be insufficient or even inadvertently destroy crucial forensic data. The pressure to quickly identify the source and scope of the compromise, while adhering to strict forensic protocols, requires meticulous planning and execution. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves isolating the affected system in a manner that preserves its current state for forensic examination. This typically means taking a forensic image of the system's storage media. This process creates an exact bit-for-bit copy of the original drive, ensuring that the original evidence remains untouched. This aligns with the fundamental principles of digital forensics, which prioritize data integrity and chain of custody. In the context of U.S. regulations, this approach supports compliance with legal discovery processes and ensures that any evidence presented in legal proceedings is admissible, as it has been collected and handled in a forensically sound manner. This method upholds the integrity of the investigation and protects the organization from potential legal challenges related to evidence tampering. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately rebooting the affected system to attempt a quick fix or to gain administrative control. This is professionally unacceptable because rebooting can alter volatile memory, RAM, overwrite temporary files, and change timestamps on files, thereby destroying critical forensic evidence. This action directly violates the principle of preserving evidence integrity and could render the collected data inadmissible in legal proceedings, leading to regulatory noncompliance if the incident requires reporting or legal action. Another incorrect approach is to directly access and modify files on the suspected compromised system to search for malicious code or indicators of compromise. This is a critical failure because any modification to the live system, even with good intentions, can alter file metadata, such as access times, modification times, and creation times. This alteration compromises the forensic soundness of the evidence and can lead to false conclusions or the inability to prove the original state of the system. This directly contravenes the requirements for maintaining a verifiable chain of custody and evidence integrity, which are essential for legal and regulatory compliance in the U.S. A further incorrect approach is to rely solely on network logs and security alerts without examining the endpoint itself. While network logs are valuable, they often lack the granular detail found on the compromised host. Focusing only on network data might miss crucial evidence residing on the system, such as malware executables, configuration changes, or user activity that was not transmitted over the network. This incomplete investigation can lead to an inaccurate understanding of the incident's scope and impact, potentially failing to meet regulatory obligations for thorough incident response and reporting. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response methodology that prioritizes evidence preservation. This involves 1. Preparation, having established procedures and tools for forensic imaging and analysis. 2. Identification, recognizing the signs of a compromise and the need for forensic investigation. 3. Containment, implementing measures to prevent further damage or spread while simultaneously planning for forensic data acquisition. 4. Forensic imaging, creating forensically sound images of affected systems before any live analysis or remediation. 5. Analysis, examining the forensic images using specialized tools. 6. Reporting, documenting findings and actions taken. This systematic approach ensures that evidence is collected and handled in a manner that is both legally defensible and ethically sound, adhering to the principles of digital forensics and relevant U.S. legal frameworks. Question 6. Strategic planning requires a proactive approach to cybersecurity incidents, particularly when dealing with sensitive customer data stored in a cloud environment. Following a detected anomaly indicating a potential unauthorized access to a customer database, what is the most appropriate initial course of action for the incident response team to ensure both effective containment and legal compliance? Option A. Immediately isolate the affected cloud instances, initiate forensic imaging of all relevant data, and engage the organization's legal counsel to guide subsequent steps and ensure compliance with data breach notification laws. Option B. Contact the cloud service provider directly to request they investigate and remediate the anomaly without involving internal legal or security teams initially. Option C. Begin deleting suspicious log files and temporary data from the affected cloud instances to remove any traces of the intrusion. Option D. Proceed with a full system restore from the last known good backup to quickly restore services, assuming the anomaly was a transient issue. The correct answer is A. Immediately isolate the affected cloud instances, initiate forensic imaging of all relevant data, and engage the organization's legal counsel to guide subsequent steps and ensure compliance with data breach notification laws. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the need for rapid incident response and the strict legal and regulatory requirements for evidence preservation and chain of custody. The organization's reliance on cloud-based services introduces complexities in data access, jurisdiction, and the potential for data alteration or loss if not handled meticulously. The incident involves a potential data breach, which carries significant implications under data protection laws, necessitating a response that is both effective in mitigating harm and compliant with legal obligations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured, forensically sound methodology that aligns with established incident response frameworks and legal mandates. By engaging legal counsel early, the incident response team ensures that all actions taken are within the bounds of applicable laws, particularly regarding data privacy and breach notification. The systematic collection and preservation of evidence, maintaining a strict chain of custody, is crucial for any subsequent investigation, legal proceedings, or regulatory inquiries. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of evidence being deemed inadmissible or compromised, thereby protecting the organization from legal repercussions and reputational damage. Adherence to the NIST incident response lifecycle preparation, detection and analysis, containment, eradication and recovery, post-incident activity, provides a robust framework for managing such events. An incorrect approach that involves immediately wiping affected systems without proper forensic imaging or legal consultation would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action would destroy potentially critical evidence needed to understand the scope of the breach, identify the attacker, and fulfill legal obligations for reporting. It could violate data protection regulations, e.g., GDPR if applicable, or U.S. state-level breach notification laws, by hindering the ability to determine what data was compromised and who needs to be notified. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the principles of forensic investigation. Another incorrect approach, such as sharing raw forensic data with external parties without proper authorization or anonymization, would also constitute a regulatory and ethical failure. This could lead to the unauthorized disclosure of sensitive information, violating privacy laws, and potentially exposing the organization to further legal liability. It undermines the principle of confidentiality and the controlled handling of sensitive digital evidence. A third incorrect approach, focusing solely on restoring services without documenting the incident or preserving evidence, would fail to meet post-incident analysis requirements and could leave the organization vulnerable to repeat attacks. It neglects the crucial step of learning from the incident to improve security posture, a key component of many regulatory frameworks and best practices. This approach also jeopardizes the ability to comply with any legal discovery requests or regulatory audits. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a layered approach. First, immediate containment and assessment of the incident's impact. Second, consultation with legal counsel to understand regulatory obligations and guide the response. Third, adherence to a documented incident response plan that incorporates forensic best practices, including evidence preservation and chain of custody. And fourth, thorough documentation and post-incident analysis to prevent recurrence. This structured decision-making process ensures that technical actions are informed by legal and ethical considerations, leading to a response that is both effective and compliant. Question 7. Quality control measures reveal that a critical server hosting customer financial data has been exhibiting unusual activity, including unauthorized access attempts and potential data exfiltration. The incident response team is tasked with investigating the breach, while ensuring that all digital evidence collected is legally sound and admissible in potential U.S. legal proceedings. Which of the following actions best upholds the principles of digital forensics and legal compliance in this scenario? Option A. Immediately wipe and rebuild the affected server to restore normal operations and prevent further unauthorized access. Option B. Create forensically sound images of the affected server's storage media and relevant network traffic logs, meticulously documenting each step of the collection process before initiating any remediation or analysis. Option C. Share raw forensic data collected from the server with the marketing department to assess the potential impact on customer relations. Option D. Conduct a quick review of system logs and running processes on the live server to identify the source of the activity. The correct answer is A. Immediately wipe and rebuild the affected server to restore normal operations and prevent further unauthorized access. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the need for rapid incident response and the strict legal and regulatory requirements for evidence preservation and chain of custody. Incident involves a potential data breach affecting sensitive customer information, which immediately triggers obligations under U.S. data privacy laws. The pressure to contain the breach and restore services must be balanced against the imperative to collect and handle digital evidence in a manner that is forensically sound and legally admissible. Failure to adhere to these principles can compromise the investigation, lead to legal repercussions, and erode customer trust. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the preservation of digital evidence according to established forensic best practices and U.S. legal standards. This involves isolating affected systems without altering their state, creating forensically sound images of storage media, and meticulously documenting every step of the collection and analysis process. This methodology ensures that the integrity of the evidence is maintained, making it reliable for internal investigation, potential legal proceedings, and regulatory compliance reporting. Adherence to these practices aligns with the principles of due process and the admissibility of evidence in U.S. courts, as well as the requirements of regulations like HIPAA, if applicable to the data type, or state-specific breach notification laws. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately wiping and rebuilding affected systems to restore service quickly. This action constitutes spoliation of evidence, which is a serious legal and ethical violation. It prevents any subsequent forensic analysis, making it impossible to determine the root cause, scope, or nature of the breach. This failure directly contravenes the legal obligation to preserve evidence in potential litigation or regulatory investigations, and undermines the integrity of the incident response process. Another incorrect approach is to conduct a superficial review of logs and system states without creating forensically sound images. While this might provide some initial insights, it is insufficient for a thorough investigation. The volatile nature of digital information means that live system analysis can be easily altered, rendering findings unreliable. This approach fails to meet the standards for digital forensics required by U.S. law, which mandates the preservation of evidence in its original state as much as possible. It also risks overlooking critical evidence that might only be discoverable through a comprehensive forensic imaging and analysis process. A third incorrect approach is to share raw forensic data with external parties without proper anonymization or legal authorization. This can lead to privacy violations, especially if the data contains personally identifiable information, PI, or other sensitive details. It also risks compromising the integrity of the investigation by exposing the evidence to unauthorized access or manipulation. U.S. privacy laws and ethical guidelines mandate careful handling of sensitive data, and any disclosure must be controlled and legally justified. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response framework that integrates forensic best practices from the outset. This involves establishing clear protocols for evidence handling, including secure collection, chain of custody documentation, and controlled analysis. When faced with a potential data breach, the immediate priority is containment and preservation. This means isolating affected systems and creating forensically sound copies before any remediation actions that could alter evidence. All actions must be meticulously documented. Professionals should consult legal counsel early in the process to understand specific reporting obligations and legal requirements related to the type of data compromised and the relevant U.S. jurisdictions. This proactive approach ensures that the incident response is both effective in mitigating damage and compliant with all legal and ethical mandates. Question 8. Operational review demonstrates a significant data exfiltration event originating from a cloud-hosted customer relationship management (CRM) system. The incident response team has identified the affected servers and suspects a sophisticated threat actor. The primary business objective is to restore CRM functionality to affected customers as quickly as possible, while ensuring that all necessary evidence is preserved for potential legal and regulatory scrutiny. Which of the following actions best balances the immediate need for service restoration with the imperative to conduct a thorough and legally compliant forensic investigation? Option A. Promptly notify all affected customers and the public about the data exfiltration, providing technical details of the compromise to build transparency. Option B. Immediately initiate a full system wipe and rebuild of the affected CRM servers to restore service, documenting the actions taken. Option C. Isolate the affected CRM servers from the network, create forensically sound images of all affected systems and relevant logs, and engage legal counsel to guide further investigation and communication. Option D. Access and analyze all available logs from the cloud provider's infrastructure without explicit authorization, focusing on identifying the exfiltrated data's destination. The correct answer is B. Immediately initiate a full system wipe and rebuild of the affected CRM servers to restore service, documenting the actions taken. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the need for rapid incident containment and the legal and ethical obligations to preserve evidence integrity and maintain data privacy. The organization's reliance on cloud-based services introduces complexities in data access, chain of custody, and potential jurisdictional issues, even within a single country's framework. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to hasty actions that compromise forensic value or violate privacy regulations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a structured, forensically sound methodology that balances incident response urgency with legal and ethical requirements. This involves isolating affected systems without altering volatile data, documenting all actions meticulously, and engaging with legal counsel early to ensure compliance with data privacy laws and incident reporting obligations. This approach upholds the integrity of the investigation, supports potential legal proceedings, and demonstrates due diligence in protecting sensitive information, aligning with principles of responsible data handling and incident management. Incorrect approach is analysis, an approach that prioritizes immediate system restoration by wiping and rebuilding affected servers without proper forensic imaging or data preservation, would fail to meet evidentiary standards. This action would likely violate regulations requiring the preservation of evidence for potential legal or regulatory investigations, such as those pertaining to data breach notification or financial reporting. It also ethically compromises the ability to understand the root cause and prevent future incidents. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately share detailed technical findings with external parties, including the public or media, without proper authorization or legal review. This could violate data privacy laws by disclosing sensitive customer or proprietary information, leading to significant legal penalties and reputational damage. It also undermines the controlled communication strategy essential during an incident. A third incorrect approach, such as accessing and analyzing cloud provider logs without a clear legal basis or proper authorization, could infringe on privacy rights and violate terms of service agreements. This could lead to legal repercussions and damage the relationship with the cloud service provider. It bypasses established protocols for data access during an investigation. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a rapid assessment of the incident's scope and impact. This is followed by immediate containment actions that minimize further damage while preserving evidence. Crucially, legal and compliance teams must be engaged from the outset to guide actions regarding data privacy, reporting, and evidence handling. Documentation is paramount at every step. The incident response plan should be consulted, and deviations should be justified and documented. Prioritizing forensically sound practices ensures that any findings are admissible and reliable, while adherence to legal and ethical guidelines protects the organization and its stakeholders. Question 9. Compliance review shows that during a recent security incident, the incident response team immediately began wiping and rebuilding compromised servers to restore services as quickly as possible. This action was taken without first creating forensic images of the affected systems or collecting volatile data. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework and best practices for conducting forensic analysis and incident response in the United States? Option A. Immediately initiate the process of creating forensically sound images of all compromised systems and collecting volatile data, such as memory dumps, before any eradication or remediation actions are performed. Option B. Proceed with wiping and rebuilding the compromised systems to restore services, as the primary objective is to minimize business disruption. Option C. Prioritize the restoration of services over the collection of critical forensic data, assuming that logs and other readily available information will be sufficient for any investigation. Option D. Begin extensive system modifications and data deletion as part of the immediate containment effort to prevent further spread of the threat. The correct answer is A. Immediately initiate the process of creating forensically sound images of all compromised systems and collecting volatile data, such as memory dumps, before any eradication or remediation actions are performed. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response, balancing the need for rapid containment and eradication with the legal and regulatory requirements for evidence preservation. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to actions that inadvertently compromise the integrity of digital evidence, potentially hindering forensic analysis and legal proceedings. The specific jurisdiction for this exam is the United States, and therefore, all regulatory and legal considerations must align with U.S. federal and state laws, as well as relevant industry best practices. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the preservation of volatile data and the integrity of the compromised systems before any eradication or remediation actions are taken. This aligns with the principles of digital forensics, which emphasize maintaining the chain of custody and ensuring that evidence is admissible in legal proceedings. In the U.S., the admissibility of digital evidence is governed by rules of evidence, such as the Federal Rules of Evidence, which require that evidence be relevant, reliable, and authentic. By creating forensic images of affected systems and collecting volatile data, like memory dumps. First, the incident response team ensures that a forensically sound copy of the compromised state is available for later analysis without altering the original evidence. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of spoliation of evidence, a critical legal and ethical failure. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately wiping and rebuilding compromised systems without first preserving forensic images. This action constitutes spoliation of evidence, which can have severe legal consequences, including dismissal of charges or civil liability. It directly violates the principles of evidence preservation mandated by U.S. legal frameworks. Another incorrect approach is to proceed with extensive system modifications and data deletion as part of the immediate containment effort without documenting these actions or their impact on potential evidence. This lack of meticulous documentation and forensically sound procedures undermines the integrity of the incident response process and the admissibility of any subsequent findings. It fails to meet the standards of due diligence expected in a professional incident response engagement under U.S. law. A third incorrect approach is to prioritize the restoration of services over the collection of critical forensic data, leading to the loss of potentially vital information. While business continuity is important, it should not come at the expense of legally required evidence preservation. This approach demonstrates a misunderstanding of the dual objectives of incident response: to mitigate damage and to gather evidence for investigation and potential prosecution. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response methodology that integrates forensic preservation from the outset. This involves establishing clear protocols for evidence collection, handling, and documentation that comply with U.S. legal standards. When faced with conflicting priorities, such as service restoration versus evidence preservation, a risk-based assessment should be performed, prioritizing actions that maintain the integrity of evidence while still addressing immediate threats. Documentation is paramount. Every action taken, especially those that might alter the state of compromised systems, must be meticulously recorded. This ensures transparency, accountability, and the defensibility of the incident response actions in any subsequent legal or regulatory review. Question 10. The performance metrics show a significant increase in the volume of security alerts generated by the Cisco CyberOps technologies. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for efficient alert management with the imperative to identify and respond to genuine security incidents in a timely and compliant manner? Option A. Escalate every single alert generated by the Cisco CyberOps technologies directly to the incident response team for immediate in-depth investigation, regardless of its perceived severity or confidence level. Option B. Rely solely on the default alert filtering mechanisms of the Cisco CyberOps technologies without any human review or contextual analysis to manage the alert volume. Option C. Automatically dismiss all alerts that exceed a predefined daily threshold, assuming they are primarily false positives due to system tuning issues. Option D. Implement a tiered alert prioritization system that leverages threat intelligence, asset criticality, and behavioral analysis to triage alerts, escalating only those with a high probability of being a genuine threat for full incident response investigation. Correct answer is D. Implement a tiered alert prioritization system that leverages threat intelligence, asset criticality, and behavioral analysis to triage alerts, escalating only those with a high probability of being a genuine threat for full incident response investigation. Explanation. The performance metrics show a significant increase in the number of security alerts generated by the Cisco CyberOps technologies deployed within the organization. This surge in alerts, while potentially indicating improved detection capabilities, presents a professional challenge in distinguishing between genuine threats and false positives. The incident response team must efficiently triage these alerts to prioritize critical incidents, allocate resources effectively, and minimize the risk of overlooking a genuine attack. The challenge is amplified by the need to adhere to regulatory frameworks governing data breach notification and incident handling, which often have strict timelines and reporting requirements. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based triage process, leveraging the capabilities of Cisco CyberOps tools to enrich alert data and correlate events. This approach prioritizes alerts based on severity, potential impact, and confidence levels derived from threat intelligence and behavioral analysis. By focusing on validated incidents, the team ensures that resources are directed towards genuine threats, thereby fulfilling regulatory obligations to investigate and respond to security incidents promptly and thoroughly. This aligns with best practices in incident response and demonstrates due diligence in protecting sensitive data, as often mandated by regulations like the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. If the organization handles EU citizen data or similar national data protection laws. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss a large volume of alerts without proper investigation, assuming they are all false positives. This failure to investigate could lead to overlooking a sophisticated attack, resulting in a significant data breach. Such an oversight would constitute a direct violation of regulatory requirements for timely detection and response to security incidents, potentially leading to substantial fines and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach is to escalate every alert to a full incident response investigation without any initial triage. This would overwhelm the incident response team, leading to delays in addressing genuine threats and inefficient use of resources, also contravening the principle of prompt and effective incident handling. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on automated alert filtering without human oversight. While automation is crucial, critical thinking and contextual understanding are necessary to interpret complex attack patterns, and failing to incorporate this human element can lead to misclassification of alerts and missed threats, again, risking regulatory noncompliance. A professional decision-making process should involve establishing clear triage criteria based on the organization's risk appetite and regulatory obligations. This includes defining alert severity levels, identifying critical assets, and integrating threat intelligence feeds. When faced with a high volume of alerts, the team should first apply automated correlation and enrichment features within Cisco CyberOps tools. Subsequently, a human analyst should review the prioritized alerts, using their expertise to validate findings and determine the appropriate response. This iterative process of automation and human analysis ensures efficiency, accuracy, and compliance. Question 11. Process analysis reveals that a critical web server has been compromised, exhibiting unusual outbound network traffic and signs of unauthorized file modifications. The immediate business priority is to restore service to prevent significant financial losses. Which of the following actions best balances the need for rapid service restoration with the imperative to preserve digital evidence for potential forensic analysis and regulatory compliance? Option A. Immediately disconnect the affected server from the network, create a bit-for-bit forensic image of its storage devices, and then proceed with analysis on the image while initiating remediation on a separate, clean system. Option B. Begin analyzing the live system for indicators of compromise and attempt to identify the source of the intrusion while simultaneously working to restore services. Option C. Initiate an immediate system wipe and rebuild of the compromised server to restore normal operations as quickly as possible, assuming the logs will provide sufficient information. Option D. Collect system logs and any readily accessible files from the compromised server, then proceed with rebuilding the server and analyze the collected data later. The correct answer is A. Immediately disconnect the affected server from the network, create a bit-for-bit forensic image of its storage devices, and then proceed with analysis on the image while initiating remediation on a separate, clean system. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the need for rapid incident response and the strict legal and regulatory requirements for evidence preservation and chain of custody. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise the integrity of forensic data, potentially jeopardizing legal proceedings or internal investigations. The complexity arises from balancing operational demands with the meticulous, legally defensible processes required in digital forensics. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the preservation of volatile data and the establishment of a secure, documented chain of custody. This aligns with the principles of digital forensics as mandated by frameworks like those implicitly referenced in the CBRFIR exam, which emphasize the integrity and admissibility of evidence. By creating a forensic image of the affected system before any remediation or analysis, the integrity of the original data is maintained. Documenting every step, from acquisition to analysis, ensures a verifiable chain of custody, which is crucial for legal admissibility and regulatory compliance. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of data alteration and provides a reliable foundation for subsequent investigation and reporting. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately wiping and rebuilding the affected server to restore services. This action constitutes a severe regulatory and ethical failure because it destroys critical evidence. In many jurisdictions, regulations governing data breaches and incident response require the preservation of evidence for a specified period to allow for investigation and potential legal action. This approach bypasses these requirements entirely, rendering any subsequent investigation incomplete and potentially inadmissible. Another incorrect approach is to perform analysis directly on the live system without creating a forensic image. This is professionally unacceptable as it risks altering the very data being investigated. Volatile data, such as running processes, network connections, and memory contents, can be lost or changed by the act of analysis itself. This violates the principle of non-alteration of evidence, a cornerstone of forensic practice, and would likely lead to the exclusion of any findings in a legal or regulatory context. A third incorrect approach is to collect data, but fail to document the acquisition process or maintain a chain of custody. This is a significant ethical and regulatory lapse. Without proper documentation and a verifiable chain of custody, the integrity of the collected data is questionable. Regulatory bodies and legal systems require proof that the evidence has not been tampered with from the point of collection to its presentation. Failure to do so undermines the credibility of the investigation and can lead to the dismissal of findings. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased approach to incident response that explicitly incorporates forensic best practices. This involves 1. Containment, which may involve isolating the affected system. 2. Preservation, which mandates the creation of forensic images of affected systems, prioritizing volatile data. 3. Analysis, conducted on the forensic images, not the live systems. 4. Documentation, meticulously recording all actions, tools, and findings. 5. Reporting, presenting findings clearly and concisely. This structured decision-making process ensures that operational needs are balanced with legal and ethical obligations, safeguarding the integrity of the investigation and the organization. Question 12. The efficiency study reveals that the incident response team's current methodology for handling a ransomware attack lacks a clear, documented process for volatile data acquisition, potentially jeopardizing forensic integrity. Considering the U.S. legal framework for digital evidence, which of the following actions best upholds forensic best practices and regulatory compliance during the initial stages of a ransomware incident? Option A. Rely solely on automated scanning tools to identify and remove the ransomware without documenting the acquisition process. Option B. Proceed with forensic imaging of hard drives without capturing volatile data, assuming it is less critical for ransomware analysis. Option C. Conduct a thorough, forensically sound acquisition of volatile data, including memory dumps and running processes, before any system shutdowns or restorations. Option D. Immediately initiate system, reboots, and restoration procedures to contain the ransomware and restore operations as quickly as possible. The correct answer is D. Immediately initiate system, reboots, and restoration procedures to contain the ransomware and restore operations as quickly as possible. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals that the incident response team's current methodology for handling a ransomware attack lacks a clear, documented process for evidence preservation, particularly concerning volatile data. This scenario is professionally challenging because a failure to properly preserve volatile data can severely compromise the integrity of forensic analysis, potentially rendering crucial evidence inadmissible in legal proceedings or ineffective for understanding the full scope of the attack. The team must balance the urgency of containment and eradication with the meticulous requirements of digital forensics. The correct approach involves implementing a structured, documented procedure for volatile data acquisition that aligns with established forensic best practices and relevant U.S. legal frameworks governing digital evidence. This includes using forensically sound tools and techniques to capture data such as running processes, network connections, and memory contents before they are lost. This approach represents best professional practice because it ensures the integrity and admissibility of evidence, which is paramount in any incident response, especially when legal or regulatory action might follow. Adherence to these standards is often implicitly or explicitly required by U.S. legal precedent and guidelines for digital evidence handling, ensuring that findings are defensible. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate system reboots or restoration without a prior volatile data capture fails to acknowledge the critical nature of this data. This represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure because it violates the principle of preserving evidence in its most pristine state. Such actions can lead to the destruction of evidence, which could be interpreted as obstruction of justice or a violation of data breach notification laws if the investigation is hampered. Another incorrect approach might involve relying solely on automated tools without proper validation or documentation of the acquisition process. This is ethically problematic as it bypasses the professional responsibility to ensure the reliability and trustworthiness of the collected evidence, potentially leading to flawed analysis and incorrect conclusions, which could have severe consequences for the organization and its stakeholders. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the potential legal and regulatory implications of an incident. This involves consulting incident response plans that incorporate forensic requirements and, if necessary, engaging legal counsel early. The team must then prioritize actions based on the type of incident and the data at risk, always ensuring that evidence preservation is a core component of the containment strategy. A thorough risk assessment should guide the selection of forensic tools and techniques, ensuring they are appropriate for the data types involved and meet forensic standards. Continuous training and adherence to documented procedures are essential to maintain competence and ethical conduct in incident response. Question 13. The efficiency study reveals that the incident response team's current methodology for handling a ransomware attack is not meeting critical recovery time objectives, RTO. Specifically, the team is spending excessive time on initial system isolation and data deletion before conducting thorough forensic analysis. Considering the need to balance rapid recovery with evidence integrity, which of the following approaches best aligns with professional incident response, best practices, and potential regulatory expectations for conducting forensic analysis and incident response? Option A. Engage a third-party incident response firm to handle all aspects of the incident, including containment and forensic analysis, without detailed pre-engagement planning regarding evidence handling. Option B. Prioritize the preservation of volatile data. Establish a secure, isolated environment for forensic imaging of affected systems, and then proceed with containment and eradication based on the forensic findings. Option C. Immediately isolate all affected systems and initiate data deletion to prevent further encryption, then focus on restoring from backups without further investigation. Option D. Focus on broad system isolation and immediate eradication of suspected malicious files, deferring any forensic analysis until after business operations are fully restored. The correct answer is B. Prioritize the preservation of volatile data. Establish a secure, isolated environment for forensic imaging of affected systems, and then proceed with containment and eradication based on the forensic findings. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals that the incident response team's current methodology for handling a ransomware attack is not meeting critical recovery time objectives, RTO. This scenario is professionally challenging because a successful ransomware incident response requires a delicate balance between rapid containment and thorough forensic analysis to understand the attack vector, scope, and potential data exfiltration. Rushing containment without adequate forensic data can lead to incomplete eradication, allowing the threat to persist or re-emerge, while overly extensive forensic analysis can delay critical business operations restoration, leading to significant financial and reputational damage. The correct approach, which involves prioritizing the preservation of volatile data and establishing a secure, isolated environment for forensic imaging before initiating broad containment and eradication, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principles of digital forensics and incident response, emphasizing the need for evidence integrity. By first securing volatile data, like memory and network connections, and then creating forensic images of affected systems, the team ensures that critical evidence is not lost or altered during the chaotic initial stages of containment. This methodical approach allows for a more accurate reconstruction of the incident, identification of the root cause, and validation of eradication efforts, all while adhering to the implicit requirements of maintaining data integrity for potential legal or regulatory scrutiny. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate system isolation and data deletion without proper forensic imaging and volatile data preservation is professionally unacceptable. This failure would violate the ethical obligation to conduct a thorough and accurate investigation. From a regulatory perspective, depending on the jurisdiction and the nature of the data compromised, this could lead to noncompliance with data breach notification laws and evidence preservation requirements, potentially resulting in fines and legal repercussions. For instance, if the incident involves sensitive personal data, the failure to properly investigate and document the breach could violate data protection regulations. Another incorrect approach, which prioritizes restoring systems from backups without any forensic analysis, is also professionally unsound. While rapid restoration is a goal, bypassing forensic analysis means the attack vector and potential vulnerabilities are not understood. This leaves the organization susceptible to repeat attacks. Ethically, this demonstrates a lack of due diligence in protecting the organization's assets and data. Regulatory failures would stem from the inability to provide a comprehensive account of the incident, which may be required by regulators to assess the organization's security posture and response effectiveness. A third incorrect approach, which involves engaging a third-party incident response firm without clearly defining the scope of forensic analysis and evidence handling procedures, introduces significant risks. This can lead to miscommunication, loss of control over evidence, and potential gaps in the investigation. Professionally, this reflects poor planning and oversight. Regulatory and ethical failures could arise if the third party's actions compromise evidence integrity, or if the organization cannot account for the full scope of the breach due to inadequate oversight of the external response. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a predefined incident response plan that clearly outlines phases, roles, and responsibilities, with a strong emphasis on the interplay between containment, eradication, and forensic analysis. When faced with a critical incident, the team should assess the immediate threat to life and safety, followed by the threat to critical business operations, and then the threat to evidence integrity. A risk-based approach, informed by the organization's specific regulatory landscape and data sensitivity, should guide the prioritization of actions. This involves understanding the potential consequences of both delayed recovery and compromised evidence. Question 14. Market research demonstrates that organizations increasingly face sophisticated cyber threats requiring swift incident response. In the context of a data breach involving sensitive customer information, which of the following actions best aligns with the principles of conducting forensic analysis and incident response under the specified regulatory framework, while also ensuring legal defensibility? Option A. Prioritize the restoration of services by rebuilding systems from scratch, without preserving the original compromised state for forensic examination. Option B. Securely image all affected systems and relevant logs, document all actions taken, and consult with legal counsel regarding data breach notification and evidence handling procedures. Option C. Share detailed technical findings of the breach with industry peers to solicit advice on containment strategies. Option D. Immediately wipe affected systems to prevent further data exfiltration, and then begin a retrospective analysis of available logs. The correct answer is D. Immediately wipe affected systems to prevent further data exfiltration, and then begin a retrospective analysis of available logs. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the need for rapid incident response and the strict legal and ethical obligations surrounding data privacy and evidence preservation. The Cisco CyberOps professional must navigate a complex landscape where immediate action to contain a threat could inadvertently compromise the integrity of digital evidence or violate data protection regulations. Careful judgment is required to balance operational needs with legal compliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured, forensically sound methodology that aligns with established incident response frameworks and regulatory requirements. By documenting all actions, maintaining chain of custody, and adhering to legal discovery protocols, the professional ensures that any evidence gathered is admissible and that the organization remains compliant with relevant data protection laws. This proactive approach minimizes legal risk and supports effective post-incident analysis and remediation. An incorrect approach that involves immediate data deletion or alteration to cleanse the system without proper forensic imaging or legal authorization would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action would likely violate data preservation orders, compromise the integrity of evidence crucial for legal proceedings or internal investigations, and potentially lead to severe penalties under data privacy laws. Another incorrect approach, such as sharing sensitive incident details with unauthorized parties before proper legal review, would breach confidentiality agreements and data protection regulations, exposing the organization to reputational damage and legal repercussions. A third incorrect approach, failing to document critical steps taken during the incident response, undermines the chain of custody and makes it impossible to reconstruct the response process, which is a fundamental requirement for both forensic integrity and regulatory compliance. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the incident's scope and potential impact, followed by immediate containment strategies that are forensically responsible. This includes consulting with legal counsel early in the process to understand specific jurisdictional requirements and data privacy obligations. The framework should emphasize meticulous documentation of all actions, adherence to established incident response playbooks, and continuous assessment of legal and ethical implications throughout the incident lifecycle. Question 15. Assessment of the incident response team's actions following a suspected ransomware attack on a U.S.-based financial institution where customer financial data may have been compromised. The team has immediate access to the affected servers and network logs. Which of the following approaches best adheres to U.S. regulatory frameworks and forensic best practices for preserving evidence integrity? Option A. Begin live analysis of the affected servers to quickly identify the entry point and scope of the compromise, making notes of any changes made. Option B. Rely solely on automated threat detection tools to identify the source of the attack, and then proceed with manual remediation based on the tool's output. Option C. Immediately initiate system restoration and data recovery procedures, prioritizing the return of services, while collecting network logs as they become available. Option D. Create forensically sound images of all affected systems and relevant network devices before any live analysis or restoration attempts, meticulously documenting each step. The correct answer is C. Immediately initiate system restoration and data recovery procedures, prioritizing the return of services while collecting network logs as they become available. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the need for rapid incident response and the strict legal and regulatory requirements for evidence preservation and chain of custody. The incident involves a potential data breach affecting sensitive customer information, necessitating swift action to contain the threat and mitigate damage. However, any forensic analysis must be conducted in a manner that ensures the integrity of the evidence, making it admissible in potential legal proceedings. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise this integrity. The organization's reliance on Cisco CyberOps technologies means that the incident response team must be proficient in using these tools to collect and analyze evidence in a forensically sound manner, adhering to established best practices and relevant U.S. regulations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and forensically sound methodology for evidence collection and analysis, prioritizing the preservation of data integrity and chain of custody. This aligns with U.S. legal standards for digital evidence, such as those outlined in the Federal Rules of Evidence, which require evidence to be relevant, authentic, and not unduly prejudicial. By creating a forensic image of the affected systems, the team ensures that the original data remains unaltered. The subsequent analysis of this image, using specialized tools and techniques, allows for the identification of the root cause and scope of the incident without risking the destruction or modification of critical evidence. Documenting every step of the process, including the tools used, timestamps, and personnel involved, is crucial for establishing a robust chain of custody, which is a fundamental requirement for evidence admissibility in U.S. courts. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of legal challenges to the findings and supports effective remediation and future prevention strategies. Incorrect approaches analysis, an approach that involves directly analyzing the live system without creating a forensic image, is professionally unacceptable due to significant regulatory and ethical failures. This method directly violates the principle of preserving evidence integrity. Modifying the live system during analysis, even unintentionally, can alter timestamps, delete log files, or overwrite critical data, rendering the evidence unreliable and inadmissible in legal proceedings. This failure to adhere to forensic best practices can lead to the dismissal of charges or civil claims, undermining the organization's legal standing and potentially exposing it to further liability. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize system restoration and data recovery over thorough forensic analysis, potentially discarding or overriding evidence in the process. A rapid restoration is a critical business objective. It cannot come at the expense of evidence integrity. This approach fails to meet the ethical obligation to conduct a comprehensive investigation and the legal requirement to preserve evidence. The organization could face severe penalties if it is later determined that crucial evidence was destroyed due to a rushed restoration process, particularly under regulations like HIPAA if protected health information, FI, was involved, where strict data breach notification and investigation protocols are mandated. A third incorrect approach would be to rely solely on automated tools without proper validation or manual verification of findings. While automated tools are essential for efficiency, they can sometimes produce false positives or miss subtle indicators of compromise. A failure to validate automated findings through manual inspection and cross-referencing can lead to inaccurate conclusions about the incident's cause and scope. This lack of due diligence represents a failure in professional responsibility and can result in ineffective remediation efforts, leaving the organization vulnerable to repeat attacks. Ethically, it is imperative to provide accurate and verified information to stakeholders and legal authorities. Professional reasoning. Professionals in incident response and forensic analysis must adopt a decision-making framework that balances operational needs with legal and ethical imperatives. This framework should prioritize 1. Understanding the legal and regulatory landscape relevant to the incident and the organization's data. 2. Adhering to established forensic best practices for evidence collection, preservation, and analysis. 3. Documenting all actions meticulously to maintain a clear chain of custody. 4. Utilizing appropriate tools and techniques, such as those within the Cisco CyberOps suite, in a forensically sound manner. 5. Communicating findings clearly and accurately to relevant stakeholders, including legal counsel. When faced with conflicting priorities such as speed versus thoroughness, professionals must err on the side of caution, ensuring that evidence integrity is never compromised. This involves proactive planning, continuous training, and a commitment to ethical conduct. Question 16. Comparative studies suggest that in the aftermath of a detected network intrusion impacting critical business systems, an incident responder faces a dilemma: the need to preserve volatile evidence versus the immediate operational demands of the business. The organization's primary e-commerce platform is experiencing unusual network traffic and intermittent service disruptions, suspected to be a denial-of-service attack. The platform is currently processing live transactions. What is the most appropriate initial course of action for the incident responder to take to balance evidence preservation and operational continuity? Option A. Temporarily halt all e-commerce transactions and shut down the affected servers to prevent further damage and facilitate a thorough investigation. Option B. Implement network-level traffic filtering and rate limiting to mitigate the immediate impact of the suspected denial-of-service attack while preparing for forensic data acquisition. Option C. Begin analyzing live system memory and running processes on the affected servers to identify the source of the attack and its impact. Option D. Immediately initiate forensic imaging of the affected servers to create bit-for-bit copies of the data before any further changes occur. The correct answer is D. Immediately initiate forensic imaging of the affected servers to create bit-for-bit copies of the data before any further changes occur. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response, where the initial discovery of a security incident overlaps with ongoing, legitimate business operations. Professional challenge lies in balancing the urgent need for forensic data preservation with the operational requirements of the business. Delaying the incident response could lead to data loss or corruption, hindering the investigation. Conversely, immediate, uncoordinated action could disrupt critical services, causing significant financial and reputational damage. The investigator must make rapid, informed decisions under pressure, considering technical feasibility, business impact, and legal/regulatory obligations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes containment and evidence preservation while minimizing operational disruption. This involves a phased response. First, isolating the affected systems to prevent further compromise or data alteration, and second, initiating forensic imaging of the affected systems. This methodical approach aligns with best practices in digital forensics and incident response, ensuring that evidence is collected in a forensically sound manner. From a regulatory perspective, particularly within a U.S. context governed by frameworks like NIST SB 800-61 Rev. 2, Computer Security Incident Handling Guide. This approach emphasizes timely detection, analysis, containment, eradication, and recovery. The focus on preserving the integrity of evidence is paramount for any subsequent legal or compliance actions, such as those mandated by HIPAA or SOX if applicable to the organization. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately shutting down all affected systems without prior assessment. This is a regulatory and ethical failure because it can lead to the loss of volatile data, e.g., RAM contents, network connections, that is crucial for understanding the full scope and nature of the incident. It also constitutes a failure to consider business impact, potentially violating service-level agreements or causing significant financial losses, which could have downstream compliance implications if the organization is subject to regulations requiring business continuity. Another incorrect approach is to proceed with forensic analysis on live systems without creating forensically sound images. This is a critical failure in evidence integrity. Forensic analysis on live systems can alter the state of the evidence, making it inadmissible in legal proceedings or unreliable for compliance audits. Regulations often implicitly or explicitly require that evidence be collected and preserved in a manner that maintains its integrity, a principle upheld by standards like those outlined by the Scientific Working Group on Digital Evidence, SWGD. A third incorrect approach is to delay the forensic imaging process significantly to avoid any perceived disruption to ongoing business operations. This delay can lead to the overriding of critical evidence by normal system operations or by the ongoing malicious activity itself. This failure to act promptly in preserving evidence can have severe regulatory consequences, especially in industries with strict data breach notification laws or data retention requirements, as it hinders the ability to accurately determine the scope of a breach and notify affected parties as legally mandated. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured incident response methodology. This begins with preparation and a clear understanding of the organization's critical assets and business processes. Upon detection, the immediate steps involve assessment and triage to understand the nature and scope of the incident. Containment strategies should be developed and implemented, prioritizing the prevention of further damage while considering the least disruptive methods. Forensic imaging should be performed as early as feasible, ideally before significant system activity occurs or after containment measures are in place. Throughout the process, clear documentation of all actions taken, decisions made, and evidence collected is essential for accountability and compliance. Professionals must continuously evaluate the trade-offs between operational impact and the need for thorough investigation, always adhering to legal and ethical obligations regarding evidence integrity and timely response. Question 17. Compliance review shows that during a recent security incident, the incident response team immediately began wiping and rebuilding affected servers to restore normal operations as quickly as possible. No forensic images of the systems were taken prior to this action. What is the primary regulatory and ethical implication of this approach in the context of U.S. cybersecurity regulations and best practices? Option A. The immediate restoration of services demonstrates a commitment to business continuity, which is a primary objective and is generally acceptable as long as incident logs are maintained. Option B. The destruction of potential evidence may hinder investigations, lead to regulatory penalties for noncompliance with evidence preservation requirements, and compromise the ability to meet legal discovery obligations. Option C. The focus on rapid recovery is paramount, and the absence of forensic images is a minor oversight that can be addressed by relying on network traffic logs and vendor support. Option D. The team acted appropriately by prioritizing system availability, as forensic analysis is a secondary concern that can be performed on backups if necessary. The correct answer is B. The destruction of potential evidence may hinder investigations, lead to regulatory penalties for noncompliance with evidence preservation requirements, and compromise the ability to meet legal discovery obligations. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response where the urgency to contain a breach clashes with the need for meticulous evidence preservation. The professional challenge lies in balancing immediate operational needs with the legal and regulatory requirements for forensic data integrity. Failure to properly handle evidence can lead to its inadmissibility in legal proceedings, compromise the investigation, and result in significant regulatory penalties. The pressure to restore services quickly must be managed without sacrificing the foundational principles of digital forensics. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the acquisition of forensically sound images of affected systems before any remediation or restoration activities commence. This aligns with the principles of digital forensics and the requirements often found in U.S. regulatory frameworks such as NIST SB 800-86, Guide to Integrating Forensic Techniques into Incident Response, and the legal standards for evidence admissibility. A forensically sound image captures the state of the system at the time of the incident, ensuring that the data is unaltered and can be reliably analyzed. This preserves the chain of custody and provides an accurate basis for understanding the scope and nature of the compromise, which is critical for both internal investigations and potential legal actions. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately wiping and rebuilding affected systems without acquiring forensic images. This is a critical regulatory and ethical failure because it destroys potential evidence. Under U.S. law, particularly concerning data breach notification and potential litigation, the ability to prove what happened is paramount. Destroying this evidence can lead to accusations of obstruction of justice or failure to comply with discovery obligations. It also violates best practices outlined by organizations like NIST, which emphasize evidence preservation. Another incorrect approach is to perform live analysis and remediation directly on the affected systems, without creating a forensic image first. A live analysis can sometimes be necessary for immediate containment. It carries a high risk of altering volatile data, e.g., memory contents, running processes, network connections, that is crucial for a comprehensive forensic investigation. This alteration can render the evidence unreliable and inadmissible, leading to regulatory noncompliance and undermining the integrity of the incident response process. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on system logs for forensic analysis without imaging the affected systems. While logs are valuable, they are often incomplete, can be tampered with, and do not capture the full state of the system, including file contents, registry settings, and memory. This limited scope of evidence collection would likely be deemed insufficient by regulatory bodies and legal standards, failing to meet the burden of proof required in many incident response scenarios. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased approach to incident response that explicitly includes evidence acquisition as a primary step before any destructive or altering actions. This involves 1. Identification and triage. Quickly assess the situation to understand the scope. 2. Containment. Implement measures to stop the spread of the incident. 3. Forensically sound acquisition. Create bit-for-bit copies of affected systems. 4. Analysis. Examine the acquired images and other collected evidence. 5. Eradication and recovery. Remove the threat and restore systems. 6. Post-incident activity. Document lessons learned. This structured approach ensures that legal and regulatory requirements are met while effectively resolving the incident. Question 18. To address the challenge of a detected ransomware attack impacting critical servers, what is the most appropriate initial step to ensure the integrity of potential digital evidence for subsequent forensic analysis and regulatory compliance? Option A. Apply the latest security patches and antivirus definitions directly to the live, compromised servers to neutralize the threat. Option B. Focus solely on collecting and analyzing network traffic logs from the time the incident was detected. Option C. Immediately isolate the affected servers from the network and create forensically sound images of their storage devices before initiating any remediation efforts. Option D. Proceed with wiping and rebuilding the compromised servers to restore them to a known good state as quickly as possible. The correct answer is C. Immediately isolate the affected servers from the network and create forensically sound images of their storage devices before initiating any remediation efforts. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response where the integrity of digital evidence is paramount, especially when dealing with potential legal or regulatory scrutiny. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid containment and remediation with the strict requirements of digital forensics to preserve evidence for potential investigation and prosecution. Failure to adhere to forensic best practices can render evidence inadmissible, compromise the investigation, and lead to regulatory penalties. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves isolating the affected systems to prevent further spread of the malware, and then creating forensically sound images of the affected systems before any significant remediation or alteration occurs. This aligns with the principles of digital forensics, which emphasize the preservation of original data. Creating a bit-for-bit copy, forensic imaging ensures that the original evidence remains unaltered, allowing for multiple analyses without compromising the integrity of the original state. This meticulous approach is crucial for meeting the evidentiary standards often required by regulatory frameworks and legal proceedings, ensuring that any findings are defensible. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately wiping and rebuilding the affected servers. This action destroys the original state of the compromised systems, including any malware, logs, and configuration data that could serve as critical evidence. This directly violates the principle of evidence preservation and would likely lead to the inadmissibility of any subsequent findings in a legal or regulatory context. Another incorrect approach is to immediately apply security patches and antivirus definitions to the live, compromised systems. While this might seem like a quick fix, it alters the state of the system and can overwrite or destroy volatile data and malware artifacts. This modification compromises the forensic integrity of the evidence, making it difficult to determine the original cause and scope of the incident. A third incorrect approach is to only collect network traffic logs from the time of the incident. While network logs are valuable, they represent only one facet of the incident. Relying solely on network logs without examining the compromised endpoints misses crucial information about how the malware executed, what files were accessed or modified, and what credentials might have been compromised on the host systems. This incomplete collection of evidence would hinder a thorough investigation and potentially overlook critical details required for regulatory compliance or legal action. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased approach to incident response that prioritizes evidence preservation. This involves initial containment, followed by forensic imaging, then analysis, and finally remediation. This structured methodology ensures that all necessary evidence is collected and preserved in a forensically sound manner, which is essential for accurate investigation, reporting, and compliance with any applicable legal or regulatory requirements. The decision-making process should always consider the potential for legal or regulatory implications and prioritize actions that maintain the integrity of digital evidence. Question 19. Compliance review shows that during a recent security incident involving a suspected data exfiltration from a cloud-hosted application, the incident response team immediately initiated a full system restore from backups to minimize business disruption. They did not create forensically sound images of the affected servers or document the state of the compromised systems prior to the restore. Which of the following actions if taken by the incident response team, would best align with forensic best practices and U.S. regulatory expectations for evidence preservation? Option A. Rely on the cloud provider's logs and automated incident response tools to reconstruct the event timeline. Option B. Immediately create forensically sound images of the affected cloud servers before any restoration or remediation actions are taken. Option C. Proceed with wiping and rebuilding the affected servers to ensure a clean environment, assuming backups are reliable. Option D. Prioritize restoring business operations by immediately deploying clean system images without further investigation. The correct answer is B. Immediately create forensically sound images of the affected cloud servers before any restoration or remediation actions are taken. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response, where the urgency to contain a breach clashes with the need to preserve evidence for potential legal or regulatory action. The professional challenge lies in balancing immediate operational needs with long-term forensic integrity and compliance obligations. The organization's reliance on cloud services introduces complexities related to data residency, access controls, and the shared responsibility model, all of which must be navigated carefully to avoid compromising the investigation or violating data protection laws. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the preservation of evidence in its most pristine state while initiating containment. This aligns with best practices in digital forensics and incident response, which emphasize the importance of maintaining the chain of custody and ensuring the integrity of digital evidence. By isolating the affected systems and creating forensically sound images before making significant changes, the incident response team ensures that the evidence can be reliably analyzed later. This methodical approach is crucial for meeting the requirements of the U.S. legal framework, particularly concerning the admissibility of evidence in court and compliance with regulations like HIPAA or GDPR, if applicable to the data involved, though the exam focuses on U.S. The principle of least privilege and documented actions are also critical for demonstrating due diligence and adherence to security best practices. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately wiping and rebuilding affected systems without creating forensically sound images. This action, while seemingly efficient for restoring operations, destroys critical evidence. From a U.S. regulatory perspective, this could lead to violations of data preservation requirements under laws like the Sarbanes-Oxley Act (SOX) if financial data is involved, or the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act (HIPAA) if protected health information is compromised. It also severely hampers any subsequent forensic investigation, potentially preventing the identification of the root cause, the scope of the breach, or the responsible parties. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for due diligence and the potential need for accountability. Another incorrect approach is to proceed with extensive data restoration from backups without first securing the compromised systems and imaging them. While restoring data is a critical step in recovery, doing so without preserving the state of the compromised systems means that evidence of the intrusion, malware, or attacker activity might be overwritten or lost. This can lead to an incomplete understanding of the incident, making it difficult to implement effective long-term security measures. It also poses a risk of reintroducing malware or vulnerabilities if the backups themselves are compromised or do not represent a clean state. This failure to properly investigate the incident before full restoration can have significant legal and regulatory repercussions, as it may prevent the organization from fulfilling its obligations to report breaches accurately or to demonstrate that it took all reasonable steps to mitigate the damage. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on the cloud provider's automated remediation tools without independent verification or evidence preservation. While cloud providers offer valuable security services, their automated actions might not always align with forensic requirements. For instance, an automated process might delete logs or alter system states in a way that compromises evidence. The shared responsibility model in cloud computing means the organization is still accountable for its data and its incident response. Failing to independently verify and preserve evidence before or during cloud provider actions can lead to a loss of critical forensic data, making it impossible to conduct a thorough investigation or meet regulatory reporting obligations. This can result in penalties for noncompliance with data breach notification laws or other relevant regulations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response methodology that prioritizes evidence preservation. This involves 1. Identification and scoping, understanding the nature and extent of the incident. 2. Containment, isolating affected systems to prevent further damage using methods that preserve evidence. 3. Forensic imaging, creating bit-for-bit copies of affected storage media. 4. Analysis, examining the captured images to determine the cause, scope, and impact. 5. Eradication, removing the threat. 6. Recovery, restoring systems and data. 7. Lessons learned, improving security posture. Throughout this process, meticulous documentation of all actions taken, including timestamps, personnel involved, and decisions made, is paramount. This systematic approach ensures that investigations are thorough, legally defensible, and compliant with relevant regulations. Question 20. Cost-benefit analysis shows that immediate system restoration is the fastest way to resume business operations after a suspected data breach, but it also carries the risk of losing critical forensic evidence. Given the potential for regulatory scrutiny and legal action under U.S. frameworks, which of the following incident response actions best balances operational needs with the imperative of preserving evidence integrity? Option A. Prioritize the capture of volatile data, such as system memory and network traffic, before any system changes are made, followed by forensic imaging of affected systems. Option B. Focus exclusively on patching identified vulnerabilities to prevent further unauthorized access without extensive forensic data collection. Option C. Immediately initiate system shutdowns and reboots to isolate affected systems and begin the restoration process. Option D. Proceed directly with restoring systems from known good backups to minimize downtime, assuming the backups are clean. The correct answer is C. Immediately initiate system shutdowns and reboots to isolate affected systems and begin the restoration process. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response where the urgency of containing a breach clashes with the need for thorough, legally compliant evidence preservation. The professional challenge lies in balancing immediate operational needs with the long-term implications of data integrity and admissibility in potential legal proceedings. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to actions that inadvertently compromise evidence, making careful judgment and adherence to established protocols paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the preservation of volatile data before any system changes are made. This aligns with the principles of digital forensics and incident response, emphasizing the collection of evidence in its most fragile state. In the context of U.S. regulations and common legal standards for evidence, maintaining the chain of custody and ensuring data integrity are critical. By first capturing volatile memory, RAM, and network traffic, the incident response team is collecting the most transient information that could be lost or altered by system shutdowns or reconfigurations. This methodical approach ensures that the collected evidence is as close to its original state as possible, maximizing its admissibility and reliability in any subsequent investigation or legal action. This adheres to best practices that are implicitly supported by frameworks like NIST SB 800-61 Revision 2, which guides incident handling and emphasizes evidence preservation. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that immediately begins system shutdowns and reboots without prior volatile data collection fails to preserve crucial evidence. This action directly compromises the integrity of volatile memory, which contains active processes, network connections, and user activity that are vital for understanding the scope and nature of the incident. From a regulatory and legal standpoint, this could be seen as spoliation of evidence, where evidence is intentionally or negligently destroyed or altered, potentially undermining any investigation or prosecution. Another incorrect approach that involves immediately restoring from known good backups without a forensic imaging of the compromised systems is also problematic. While restoring services is a business objective, it bypasses the opportunity to collect forensic artifacts from the affected systems. This means that the root cause, attacker techniques, and the full extent of the compromise might not be understood. This failure to conduct a thorough forensic investigation can lead to recurring incidents and a lack of understanding of vulnerabilities, which could have implications under data breach notification laws if the full scope of compromised data is not accurately assessed. An approach that focuses solely on patching vulnerabilities without documenting the incident or collecting evidence is also flawed. While patching is a critical remediation step, it does not address the investigative requirements. Without proper documentation and evidence collection, it becomes difficult to prove what happened, how it happened, and what data was affected, which is essential for compliance with regulations like HIPAA or GDPR, though for this exam, we focus on U.S. frameworks. This can lead to an incomplete understanding of the incident's impact and a failure to meet reporting obligations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured incident response methodology that integrates forensic best practices. This involves a clear understanding of the incident response lifecycle: preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned. During the identification and containment phases, the priority must be on preserving evidence. This means establishing clear protocols for evidence collection, including the order of operations, volatile data first, proper handling, chain of custody, and secure storage. Decision-making should be guided by a risk assessment that weighs the urgency of containment against the imperative of evidence integrity. When in doubt, err on the side of caution by preserving evidence before taking actions that could alter it. Regular training on forensic techniques and legal requirements related to evidence handling is crucial for maintaining professional competence.